Hello, welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be a video on abstract reasoning for the Ucat and is sponsored by Medify. When I first started doing the Ucat, abstract reasoning was one that I was like, what on earth is going on? Like, is this an IQ test? Am I Albert Einstein? I don't know what's happening. What are these shapes? So it's definitely a very overwhelming one to first go into. And you know, there's such a large amount of questions with a short amount of time that it can be very overwhelming. And it is about pattern recognition, because in medicine, to diagnose someone, you know, it'll probably be like a really small thing that the patient mentions, but it links to like lots of other things. And when diagnosing, doctors use like frameworks in their mind, like kind of flow charts and just patterns that they have to kind of all keep in their mind. So it's a really important skill to be able to keep lots of things in your mind and then compare it to say, what's the diagnosis of this pattern? So when looking at Ucat exam questions, there's a lot of mnemonics that you can use. So the one that I've used the most is SCANS OASIS, which I would just write this down on the whiteboard before the section starts, you know, calm yourself down, write out all of the patterns that you could have. So SCANS OASIS is shape, colour, arrangement, number, size, orientation, angles, sides, intersections / regions, and symmetry. So I think that is great instead of just scans, which is the one that everyone uses, because the more patterns that you have in your mind, the less like actual thinking you have to do. And another really long acronym that can help you remember different patterns which is symmetry, position, enclosure, rotation, mirror image, ratio, opposites, shape, equivalence, adjacent, reflection, shading, and equidistance. So that is definitely an odd mnemonic, but it is really helpful to have all of those like terms in your mind at all times. Obviously there's more common types, but there are definitely a lot of uncommon types, and you know, equidistance, ratios, there's a lot going on. I'll insert the video of me doing a more hard type of question that is not a part of these. You get a set and you have to compare the two. So to do this, you look at the most simple boxes, like the ones with the least amount of shapes usually. So there's 2 circles and 1 square, 2 squares, 1 triangle, 1 circle, 4 squares, 8 triangles, and then from that you think, what is the relationship? So obviously you see what actual pattern was. So in this case it was points, and see how it's like not related to the number of sides. That's kind of annoying, but with these you can kind of get your intuition. Equal 8, and for B they equal 9, and obviously for this pattern it was not equaling any of those. So that is how you do that. And I think it's really important to look at the mean time spent, because in the Ucat it's so time pressured, and if you're spending like 3 minutes on a question and you got it right, that is not worth it. Like, you need to be speedy, you need to be using your intuition once you've got that like score in your mind. To improve in your abstract reasoning, it's really important to just steam through so many questions, and after doing your questions, look at the ones that you've either spent way too long on or you got wrong, and summarize what you did wrong and what the pattern was in a Word document. So in your document, have for each different type, like, you know, the questions that are is as to, like, you know, the similarity ones, and then the set A and set B and neither, and completing the sequence one. Say for completing the sequence one, it would be triangle rotates 90 degrees anti-clockwise while top left shape gains 3 sides and changes to black. Through you just writing out so many of those patterns and looking at where you went wrong, looking at where you spent too long, you will notice the patterns that are more common in Ucat, and you will start to ace them, and that's what we love to see. You know, there's only 13 minutes for 55 questions, so that is a lot. And you know, especially with the stems, like the set A and B, it's really important that you try and actually get a rule to follow and not just steam through them and get them all wrong. Though do know that your intuition is probably right, because they are patterns and it's kind of like subconscious as well as your mind thinking like, oh, SCANS OASIS, etc. One of the most reliable strategies to use is to compare the 3 simplest boxes. so the ones with the least amount of shapes in, because in the Ucat they include so many distractions, and if you spend your time looking at the most full one, you'll probably be making up a rule that does not apply to the whole set and is not relevant at all. And sometimes, you know, they'll make it really hard distractor, and it's like, you know, I spent my time doing that, but it was irrelevant. Definitely be really loose when you're looking at them, like not just one of the simplest ones, not just two, just like three. Get a really quick look and just see what is similar with them, and then from that look at the three simplest in B and see if there's the opposite. The thing that is kind of annoying is when it's not like the complete opposite but instead just different. So instead of it being like n, it might be like n+3 or n+1 or n+2, things like that. So when you're looking at these sets, it's definitely helpful to kind of like change your distance from the screen. Like with patterns, if you look further back, it can help you have a different perspective and perhaps more easily see what the difference is. For your timing, it's always good to just flag and move on, because in the abstract reasoning there is so little time. But when you're flagging your questions, don't worry, because you really do have that innate pattern recognition. So if you're just skipping through it, then make sure you'll have time at the end to go through them, but don't worry too much because the patterns are patterning without you having to worry and obviously there's so many questions that you don't want to be missing out on, like a whole 5 question set where there's a really easy pattern that is like really simple, like reflection or symmetry, something like that. From symmetry and rotational numbers, I definitely recommend to like learn some facts. Like, you know, you should learn all of the number of sides of shapes, especially the odd ones. Like an arrow has 7 sides, plus sign has 12 sides, a 5-sided star has 10 sides, and a 4-sided star has 8 sides. And then you should also know the rotational numbers, like the amount of times it rotates. Say a parallelogram has no lines of symmetry but rotational symmetry order of 2, and then a rhombus would have 2 lines of symmetry and 2 rotational. You can make flashcards out of these and just, you know, drill them in so that you're not having to count, especially like 12-sided shapes and really long ones, because a lot of patterns you'll be adding and taking away sides, so it's just a lot easier to have them in your mind instead of having to count on the screen. The patterns that are a bit odd are clocks. So with clocks, a trigger that you could think of is that it's probably going to be about the angle, like, you know, reflex angles, acute angles, obtuse angles, or it could be what the numbers add up to. That's how you kind of benefit from making your list of different patterns, because say you've done one question like 3 weeks ago, like where the clock was about the angle. A week ago you did a question where it was about the adding up of the numbers and that number being like the number of shapes somewhere else. So it's very useful to just try and do a lot of questions and just really get into it, be used to the patterns that will come up, because, you know, SCANS OASIS, how many letters is that? There's not that many patterns that are like so overwhelming that you can't practice them. So definitely try and put the time in and you'll do so well. So I hope that was helpful. This video has been sponsored by Medify, so I hope that it's been helpful and that you are using Medify to get a realistic look of what the exam is like in real life. So thanks for watching this video. Bye!